Welcome to the Westcott Crochet channel and welcome to the Pussy Bow Sweater. If you like what you see, do hit the like button. If you want to see more, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. You can purchase the written pattern by following the link in the description box. My yarn recommended a 4mm hook. I used a 4.5 and a 2.5. I also used a tape measure and a yarn needle to weave my ends. I'm going to start things off with a chain that runs from the top of my shoulder, where a bra or vest strap would sit, over to the base of my neck. For me, that's going to be 10 centimeters, and that's about 15 chains. So I'm starting with a 4.5mm hook and a slip knot as usual. And I'm going to make 15 chains. That's my 15 chains. I'm going to make an extra chain just to turn. And I'm not going to work into either of these top loops of the chain. I'm going to flip it over, and there are these back bumps. I'm going to be working into those back bumps with my first row. Now what that does is it gives me a nice start edge. So the edge looks like this. So into the back bumps, missing the first one because that's the turning chain. Into the second bump, I'm going to make a single crochet. And then I'm going to make a second single crochet into the same loop. And that starts the row with an increase. From here I'm going to put one single crochet into every stitch, all the way down to the end of the row. And that's row 1. That's the end of row 1. If you can see, the edge looks nice and neat. We've got like proper stitches go all the way down the start chain, and it looks the same as the top. So I now have 16 stitches because I added the extra one at the start of that row. So into row 2 I chain 1 to turn, and I skip that turn chain, and into every stitch I'm going to make one single crochet. So just one in each, all the way down, no increases, and that's row 2. So now I'm going to do repeats of row 1 and 2, so increasing at this end only on the row 1 repeat into the first stitch, no increases on the row 2 repeat. So chaining 1 at the end of each row to turn as always, working into the second loop from the hook, so 2 stitches at the start of row 1 to increase, 1 stitch all the way along, chain 1 and turn, come back with 1 stitch in each for the row 2 repeat. I'm going to do that 3 more times, and then I'll come back. So that's 8 rows and 4 increases. I now have 19 stitches along the bottom here, and I have this nice little slope down this one side. The next thing I need to do is make a chain that takes me from where I've left off here across to the centre of my body, so right down the middle of my neck. For me that's just 6 stitches, so 6 chains. I'm just going to go ahead and pop those on. Three, 4, 5 and 6. I'll chain an extra one to turn, and then I'm going to work back down the chain just with single crochets, 1 stitch in each chain. So starting from the second chain, the first one is my turning chain, and single crochet, 1 stitch in every chain loop. So once I've worked down the chain, the 6 chains, I come back to the main body of this section, and I just pick up my stitches here and carry on all the way down to the end of the row, chain 1 and work all the way back down, including this new section, with single crochet. So I now have 25 stitches along this bottom row, and from here I'm going to start making decreases for the cutout section. So chain 1 and turn, and into the first 2 stitches I'll work together to form 1 stitch. So missing the turn chain as always, into the next stitch, pull up a loop, into the one after, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops, and 2 stitches become 1. From here 1 stitch in each, all the way to the end of this row, where I'll chain 1 and turn, and work all the way back. I'm going to make a decrease again at the end of the row, so I'm going to stop just 2 stitches short to work that decrease. So you find me at the end of that row with just 2 stitches to work, which are going to be a decrease. So in through the first one, pull up a loop, in through the second, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 3 loops for the decrease. I'm going to repeat those 2 rows again, so I'm going to decrease at the start, go all the way to the end, all the way back, decrease at the end. That's 4 decreases now, and I have 21 stitches along the bottom. For the next row I'm going to decrease as normal at the start, but then on the return row I'll make no decrease. So I'll repeat those 2 rows from now until I get to within 2 rows of the depth that I want for my cutout section. So do the decrease at the start of this row, work all the way to the end, turn and work all the way back, and repeat. I've worked all of my decreases and I've now gone from 25 stitches up here to just 12 down here, because I worked 4 rows with decreases in each row at the start and the finish, and then I opted for 9 pairs of rows to complete the depth of my cutout with just 1 decrease in every pair. So next I just want the cutout section to just turn in a little bit at the end to give it a bit of shape. To do that I need to perform an increase at the start of the next row. So going in with the turn chain as always, and I put 2 stitches into the first stitch to increase. Then I'm going to put 1 stitch in each and work all the way to the end. I'll turn around and work 1 stitch in each all the way back to this end. And that increase has given me a nice little curve at the bottom of my cutout section here, which is what I wanted. And from here I need to create a mirror image of this side over on this side. So I need to work across the bottom and create the width of my piece and then work up from there. So I have 25 stitches over here at the widest point, so the full width of this top section is going to be 50 stitches. So after that last increase down at the bottom I have now 13 stitches, so I'm 37 stitches short of my full width, so I need to add on 37 chains. I have my 37 chains, and next I'm going to turn and work back down the chain into the back bumps again to get the nice finish, and I'm going to go into the second bump, obviously missing the turn chain. I'm going to work single crochet for 13 stitches, and I work 13 because I need to mirror what I have at the other side when I finished off. That's my 13 single crochet. Now over on the first side, side 1, the last thing I did was work an increase. So to mirror that on the other side I need to work a decrease. So over we go, and into the first 2 stitches I'll work those together to perform the decrease. After that 1 stitch in each all the way to the end, chain 1 and turn, work 1 stitch in each all the way back. Next I need to mirror the pairs of rows where I worked decreases at the start of row 1. So to mirror I need to increase at the start of row 2 9 times to match. The last row over here was row 1 of the pair with no increases, so row 2 starts with an increase and then repeat 9 times in total. That's the last of my 9 increases, having worked the last one over here at the start of the row. Next I'm going to work towards the centre, increasing at the end, then I'll turn and increase at the beginning, work back towards the edge, back towards the centre, increase, turn and increase again. After those final 4 increases, I'm back to a stitch count of 25 over here. So looking back to this side, I'm at the point where just before I chained out to join the centre of my body. So if you remember, I worked across, then I chained out, and then I came back with a row of single crochet all the way along 1 stitch in every stitch. So to mirror that on this side, what happened over here, I need to come back with a row of single crochet, then I need to chain 1 and cut my yarn, and then I need to reattach it 6 stitches in over here. I've completed my single crochet row of 25 stitches. I've already chained 1 to secure, so I'm just going to cut my yarn, pull that tight and whip it through. So then I need to make a slip knot and reattach. So I worked 6 stitches over here, so I count 6 stitches over here and insert my hook into the 7th stitch. Pop on my slip knot, pull it through, chain 1 to secure. Last section. So over here I worked 4 pairs of rows, increasing into the very first stitch of row 1, no increases in row 2. So over here I work a full row for my row 1 of each pair and then decrease into the last 2 stitches of row 2. And I start this row 1 into the very stitch where I joined my yarn. I'm all done with my 4 sets of increases. I'm back to 15 stitches, which is what I started with over on the other side. I've chained 1 and I've cut my yarn. And I've got my mirrored section. That's the top part of my front panel all finished. Next I need to start down here and work on the body section. So I'll be starting over here and working my way across in this direction. Last thing I did, I worked the chain and then I worked up this side. So I need to work back in that direction. So I'll join in this corner here. So in with my hook into that very corner stitch. I pop on a slip knot. Pull that through and chain up 1 to secure. And into that very same stitch I'm going to make 2 single crochet to increase at the start of this row. After that I'll just put 1 stitch in each stitch and I'll arrive at the chain where I joined the 2 sections. So here at the chain I'm going to be working into the top 2 loops like that, because this is the bottom of my cutout section and the finish that I want is just the back loop visible. If you want 2 loops visible at the bottom of the cutout, then you work into the back loop. So fiddly as this is, I'm going to persevere all the way along into the top loops and then across the other side of the chain. I'll pick up my regular stitches and work to the end of the row. I've gone all the way across the chain, and here I am at the end. And into this last stitch I'm going to put 2 stitches, same as I did at the beginning to work the increase. I'm going to repeat this row, increasing at the start and at the end until I get the width that I need for my front panel. So let's find out how wide I need to go along here. I take a tape measure and measure around the widest part of my body and I divide that by 2. That's my width. Now from that I subtract the width that I currently have, and that tells me how much I need to add. I needed to add on 8 centimetres, so I take my tape measure to my work and I measure out 8 centimetres. And the number of stitches there are in that 8 centimetres is the amount of stitches I need to add for my width. I count out 12, so I need to add on 12 stitches. If I increase at the start and the end of each row, I add on 2 stitches with each row. So if I work 6 rows with those increases, I'll have added 6 stitches over here and 6 stitches over here, and that's my 12. I finished my 6 rows of increases and the system works because I now have the width that I wanted. Now I'm going to be working in rows with no further increase or decrease until I get the length that I want. The top of the cutout marks the base of my neck, and I need to bear in mind that I'll be adding a bottom band. I'm going to crack on and I'll be back once I've worked my rows. That's it for my front panel. I've now worked 36 rows from the chain, so including those increase rows, so there were 6 of those plus another 30. So my panel now measures from this neck area 36 centimetres. So now I need to start on the back panel. I start my back panel as I did way back on the front panel by creating a chain that goes across the top of my shoulder. So for me, 15 chains, starting with a slip knot as always, and I chain 15. That's 15 chains and an extra one to turn. I turn the chain for the back bumps and I put 2 single crochet into the first stitch to make the increase at the start of this row, and then 1 stitch in each from there. So I'm back to working in pairs of rows, and every pair of rows will start with the increase into the very first stitch, with the second row having no increase. I need to work 4 pairs of rows. I've worked my 8 rows and I've gone from 15 to 19 stitches. From here I'm going to go straight across the body, and I'm going to mirror what happened on this side by working decreases. So I had 19 stitches, so as with the front panel the full width is 50 stitches, so I need to add on 31 chains. There's my chain, extra one to turn, and to mirror this side I need to work 19 single crochet into the back bumps. So that's row 1. I'm still working in pairs. Row 1 has no decrease. Row 2 starts with a decrease. I need 4 pairs. That's my 8 rows for this side and 4 decreases. Back to 15 stitches up here. I've chained 1 and I've cut my yarn. So I'm going to jump back in on this bottom corner, inserting my hook into the corner stitch, grab a slip knot, pop that on, pull it through and chain 1 to secure. Now starting into that very same stitch is where I start the row. I'm going to work a single crochet row, 1 stitch in each all the way along, working into the back bumps once I get to the chain. So here at the end of that row, I'm going to work that row 23 more times, making 24 in total. No increases, no decreases, just 1 stitch in each. I'm back, and that's my 24 rows worked. Just looking back to the front panel, those 24 rows would start from here and go all the way down to here. So from where I chained out 6 to work to the centre of my body, down to where I started working the increases. So given that that's where I am, I'm going to start working the increases, starting from where I left off. Work an increase at the start and at the end for 6 rows, and that'll give me my 12 stitches that I need to add to create the full width. So here I go, increasing into stitch number 1, so 2 stitches in there, and from there 1 stitch in each until I get to the end where I'll add 2 stitches again. So I'm going to work my 6 rows of increases, which gives me my 12 additional stitches and the width that I need. Once I've created the width, I need to then work on the length, just going in rows without any further increases. And that is my back panel all finished. Next I need to set myself up to join up the 2 sides. With the single crochet repeats, the rows of single crochet, the back and front look pretty much the same. So I just need to pick my favourites for whatever reason, and I need to make sure that the good sides are facing each other. So the sides that I want to face outwards are touching each other on the inside. I'm going to seam up the sides and at the shoulders, and working this way those seams will be on the inside. So starting with the easy part, which is the shoulders, where I have these nice stitches to work into on both sides. I'm going to go into the 2 loops, the first stitch on this side, the 2 loops of the first stitch on the other side, pop on a slip knot, pull that through, yarn over and slip stitch. So again, in through the next stitch on the front, next stitch on the back, yarn over and slip stitch. And I'm going to do that the whole way down, in through both sides and slip stitch to close off. I've slip stitched all the way across the shoulder, joining that side, and I'm going to chain 1, pull tight and cut my yarn. This is what it looks like on the inside, the seam, and this is what it looks like on the outside, the right side. I will at some point join the other shoulder in exactly the same way, but for now I'm going to turn to the side. The sides are a little trickier because I don't have the nice stitches to work into along the edge here. I'm working along the edge of each row. I've left my yarn attached at the bottom here, so I'm just going to follow on from there. If I hadn't, I'd just add a slip knot and join in the usual way. So I'm going to, well, first I'm actually going to chain 1 because I've forgotten to do that at the end. Okay. Then I'm going to go into the bottom loop on this side and the bottom loops on this side. Pop my loop back on and pull through. And I'm going to chain 1 to secure that. Okay, so I'm working with single crochet rows at least, so the ends of the rows are easily identifiable. I just don't have the nice 2 loops. So it's just a case of grabbing 2 loops at the end of each row and working into those. Just make sure that I work the same 2 loops on each side so that the rows line up back to front. And I'm going to slip stitch to join as with the shoulders. So make sure that my slip stitches aren't too tight, just nice and relaxed tension so that I don't get like a bowing effect, a banana ring effect. Not too loose that they're all baggy, but not too tight that it starts to bow. So I'm just going to work this way all the way up. Careful to, as I say, to join the same rows to the same row until I get to where it starts to taper here, because this is the armhole. That forms part of the armhole. Just along the straight edge I'm seaming up, not this section. Working right from the seam where I've just joined, I'm going to work with my 2.5mm hook, going down from the 4.5mm hook, and I'm going to make a bottom band. So I'm going to insert my hook right there onto the seam, and then I'm going to add a slip knot. I'm going to pull that through, and I'm going to chain the length of the band. So for me I'm going for 30 chains. There's 30 chains. I'll chain an extra 1 to turn. I'm not working into that turn chain, so starting from the second loop from my hook, I'm going to make a single crochet, and I'm going to put 1 stitch in each all the way down back to the base. I'm not using the back loops this time, I'm using the regular loops as you would from a starting chain. I suppose it's the top loop. As you're looking at your chain, your normal chain, you've got your 2 loops at the front. I'm going to that one. the top one. So one stitch in each all the way down back to the base. I've made it to within the last stitch of the chain. I'm going to be slip stitching and attaching this bottom band around the base of the top. So I'll just finish this last stitch, number 30, right down at the bottom. So I joined at one side of the seam, so my next stitch along the base is the one at the other side of the seam. So I'll go into there and make a slip stitch. And I'll slip stitch into the next one, so twice in total. And then I'm going to turn around and work back up this new section. I'm going to work the back loops only. So here are the top loops of the stitch. I'm going to be working into the back loop only, the one furthest away from me. So I'm also going to be starting third stitch along, because these first two stitches are the slip stitches I just worked. So I don't work back into those. So into the third stitch and the back loop only, if I can get myself orientated, I'm going to make a single crochet. So I'm going to work a single crochet all the way up, back loop only. When I get to the top, I will chain one. I will skip that turn chain and then work all the way back down into the back loop, single crochet, back to the base. And back here at the base, where I'm going to slip stitch again twice to join this bottom band. This is where I last slip stitched. You can see the stitch attached. I'm going to grab this one and this one. So into one, into two, and then I'm going to turn around and work all the way back up and all the way back down, slip stitch twice into the base, and I'm going to do that all the way around until I get back to here. That's it for me. I've gone all the way around, I've made quite a wide band. As you can see, it cinches in the bottom here, but it's still very stretchy with the back loop stitch. So I just need to slip stitch into my final stitch along the band, and then I'll go ahead and join up the two sides. So here's my final stitch. I'm just going to slip stitch into there. And here's where I started with the start chain. I'm actually going to slip stitch into there also. And now I'm ready to join the two sides. So I need to work on the wrong side, so I need to turn the right sides to face each other. I'm not going to turn the whole thing inside out, just this bottom section is fine. So I just need to orientate myself, bear with me. Okay, where's my yarn gone? There he is. Alright, so I've got the start chain on one side and the finish row on the other side. Into my start chain I've got the remaining loop. I'm going to go into there on this side. Into the finishing row I go into the back loop. I've got two loops. I'm going to the back loop only. And then I'm going to yarn over and pull through a slip stitch. So again, into the remaining loop from the start chain, into the back loop from the finishing row, and slip stitch. Again, I'm making sure I don't pull these too tight so that it doesn't bow in, but not too loose so that it leaves it baggy. And that's how I'll work the join the whole way down. When I get to the end, chain one and cut my yarn. So I've gone all the way down and cut my yarn. You can see here's the seam on the inside, and here is how it looks on the outside. The pattern just follows right across. Aside from weaving in my end here, I'm all done with the bottom, and now onto the sleeves. I've already added one along with a cuff. Can't actually fit it on camera. There we go. There's the bottom bit. I'm going to show you how I did that over on the other side. I'm going back to my 4.5mm hook for the sleeve. Here I am at the arm opening. I'm going to join my yarn at the bottom here where the seam is. So hook goes in on one side of the seam. I'm going to pop on a slip knot and pull it through. I'm going to chain one and I'm going to mark that chain. Okay, the stitch is marked, and I'm going to go all the way around the arm opening with one single crochet at the end of each row. If you look at the pattern, we've got ridges. Each ridge contains 2 rows. So there's 2 rows, there's 2 rows, there's 2 rows. So for each ridge, between each ridge, I should have 2 stitches. So there's one that I've just worked, and I'm going to go into the next one. There we go. And what you might also notice is that you have what looks to be 2 loops for the next row, like 2 regular loops, being the side of a stitch. And then on the next one, it looks like 1 loop, but it is 2. They've been pulled together. But there are 2 loops there. So that's the next row. And that's how it works up the whole way around. So it's got what looks to be 2 loops, almost like a regular stitch, and then what looks to be 1 loop where it's 2 loops pulled together. So if you go like that all the way around, you don't miss a row. So next I come to the area where I joined, where I worked down for the bottom half of that front panel. And it's a bit messier there because I've got a slip knot on there, but it's the same situation. Just 2 stitches between the ridges. Just find your way through. So I'm going to do that all the way around, and I'm going to be back at the marked stitch where I'm going to join off the round. I've gone all the way around the sleeve with a single crochet row. I closed the round with a slip stitch into that marked stitch. I've chained one and I've marked that new stitch. So from here I'm going to work the length of the sleeve in the same way as I worked the bottom band. So I'm going to chain out for the length minus the cuff, and then I'm going to work back down in rows and slip stitch into the base. Before I do that, I need to sort out the arm opening. At the moment I've got too many stitches, so it'd create quite a wide sleeve, which I don't want. So I have 40 stitches going up one side and 40 stitches coming down the other. So I need to reduce that stitch count so that I can get the width of the sleeve that I need. So I take a tape measure, measure around the widest part of my arm and divide that by 2. I then take that measurement and just mark it out on my work, anywhere where the rows are working horizontally. So that half measurement is half of my sleeve. So however many rows are in half of my sleeve, I need to work that many rows along each side of my arm opening. So I need to adjust my stitch count accordingly. So as I mentioned, every ridge is 2 rows. So that's 2 rows, that's 2 rows, that's 2 rows. So I just count how many rows come within my half sleeve measurement and adjust my stitches to accommodate them. For my opening, I have 40 stitches down either side. I need to have 26 on either side, so I've got 14 more than I need. That means I need to work 14 decreases to lose those 14 stitches. Now I want to space those decreases out along the opening, so I do that by taking my 40 stitches and dividing it by the 14 that I need to lose. That gives me 2.85. I then round that 2.85 up to 3. So for every third stitch I have along my arm opening, I need to lose that third stitch. That works by working 1 stitch on its own, and then 2 and 3 together. Next one on its own, 2 and 3 together. So onto the decreases. I work the first stitch on its own, and then I work number 2 and number 3 together to decrease and disappear that third stitch. So one on its own, 2 and 3 together, losing that third stitch. And I'll do that the whole way around and slip stitch to close off into the marked stitch at the end. If you're following these instructions, obviously work to your own numbers, so just work your decreases based on whatever calculation you got. So I've gone all the way around and I now have my new stitch count. I ended up with 27 going up and 27 coming down. Because my calculation didn't throw up a full number, it was like 2 point something, I have an extra stitch in both directions, which is fine. I could have worked it so that I got rid of it, but I'm not working for a specifically tight fitting sleeve, so it didn't really matter in this instance. What I've done is I've put a stitch marker in the 27th and 28th stitch, which is my top 2 stitches. If you're following instructions here and you have an even number, just mark the last stitch on this side. Because I have an odd number, I'm going to mark the last 2 stitches, the top 2 stitches, and I'll explain why in a minute. So as I mentioned, I'll be creating the sleeve in the same way as the bottom band, kind of. There are a couple of differences. So I've gone ahead and I've chained out 45 chains, which is the length of my sleeve minus the cuff. That came to about 35 centimetres. So then I chained an extra 1 to turn, and then I work back down with a row of single crochet, and that's where I am now, back at the base, where I'm going to slip stitch, which is the same, no change there. So this is where I joined into the next stitch. It's my first slip stitch. And then the second slip stitch. And then I turn to work back up this new length, the sleeve length. So the first difference is I'm going to be working regular single crochet like the body, not into the back loops. So that's the first difference. So still going from the third chain because the first 2 are the slip stitches, but working a full single crochet through both loops. So all the way down, single crochet in each, chain 1, come back again, full row of single crochet. I've worked all the way back down and I'm here at my last stitch on this row, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2 single crochets into this last stitch before I slip stitch into the base. So 1 and 2, and then I'm going to slip stitch into the base. So 1 and 2. So that's the second difference. That's what I'm going to do each time. So all the way up this side, just before I come to the slip stitches, I'm going to do 2 stitches into that final stitch and then slip stitch twice. And what that will do, if I add a stitch each time I come to the base, it's going to create a little wedge shape and it will push the sleeve down a bit. So we do that just so we don't get a sleeve that just comes straight outwards. It looks a bit more natural looking rather than sort of like scarecrow arms coming straight out. So if you have an odd number like me, work up to your stitch marker. You'll have 2 stitches for your stitch marker to slip stitch into. If you have an even number and you've marked that last stitch on this side, work up to and including that marked stitch, adding your extra stitch each time before you slip stitch. I'll be back when I reach the top. I've worked the first half of my sleeve. If you're like me and you have an uneven number of stitches going up on each side, so 2 stitches to slip stitch into along the top there. You need to take another trip out and back to the end and back, and this time don't put an extra stitch into that last stitch. Just slip stitch then into the 2 marked stitches which go up and over the shoulder. After that, the evens and unevens are all at the same spot, which is where I am now. So going down the other side, I need to make decreases to reverse what I did on the first side and get me back to where I was when I started stitch count wise. So the 3rd stitch from the hook, first 2 are slip stitches, and the 4th stitch I'm going to work together as a decrease. So into that one, and 2 become 1. Then I work all the way to the end and chain 1 and come all the way back, and then I'm going to slip stitch into the base and work the decrease again on the way out. So I'll do that all the way down until I get to the last 2 stitches, because I didn't work an increase at the start when I started, so I don't work a decrease at the end. I leave the stitch count as is. That gets me back to where I was when I started. Then I just need to slip stitch into those final 2 stitches, and I'll be at a place then where I can join the 2 sides of the stitch. So I now have 2 sides to join, and to do that I need to turn it inside out because I'm going to join on the wrong side. So I'll just turn myself inside out. There we go. As I've done before, I'm going to work a stitch on either side. So the stitch from the row that I've just finished is my first side. So I've got 2 loops there, and then the chain side, so I've got 1 remaining loop there. So in through stitch number 1 on the finished row, 2 loops there, and the last loop from the chain side, in we go, yarn over, and eventually slip stitch. Oh, there we go. In through the loops on this side, in through the last loop on the chain side, giving me all kinds of problems. On you go. There we are. And slip stitch. So I'll work that all the way down, and when I get to the end I'm going to leave my yarn attached because I need to add on a cuff. I'm all joined up. This is what it looks like from the other side. I'm going to leave it inside out because I'm going to work the cuff, and the stitch pattern that I'm using, it doesn't matter whether it's inside out or right side out, as long as all the seams are on the same side obviously, but the stitch pattern works the same on both sides, so I can carry on working in this way. I'm going to have to seam up the cuff anyway, so it needs to be inside out for that, so I might as well leave it as it is. So I have chained 1. That's the chain 1 I'm going to slip stitch into at the end to close the round. So first I'm going to go all the way around the cuff with a row of single crochet in exactly the same way as I did for the armhole on the sleeve. 1 stitch at the end of each row. When I get round to the other side, slip stitch into that chain 1 and leave my yarn attached for the next stage. So that's me all the way around. The next job is to reduce the stitch count on the cuff, same as I reduced the stitch count on the arm opening earlier. So I just need to take a measurement all around my wrist, and then I go to the bottom band because I'm going to be using the same hook size and the same pattern to create the cuff. So measure out my wrist measurement across here, count how many rows are in this measurement. That's how many rows I need for my cuff. So every ridge is 2 rows. Every time I go up and down, there's 2 rows, and slip stitch twice into the base. So for every 2 rows or every ridge, I need 2 stitches around the cuff. So for me, I need 18 ridges or 36 stitches, which is 2 times the 18. I currently have 52 stitches, so I need to lose 16 of these stitches. Taking my 52 that I currently have, divide it by the 16 that I need to lose, and I get 3.25. So every third stitch needs to be worked along with every second stitch. So on to the decreases. As before, I have 1 on its own, 2 and 3 together to lose that third stitch. 1 on its own, 2 and 3 as the decrease, and that'll give me my stitch count. So if you're making your own, work to your own figures, obviously, your own calculations, and that will give you your stitch count. I'll slip stitch in to close the round, and then I can go on and make the cuff. I've worked all the reductions, and now I'm ready to finish off with the cuff. I've switched back to my 2.5mm hook, same as I had for the bottom band. I've chained out 25 chains, which is about 14 centimetres, and I've worked back down with a row of single crochet, and I'm going to slip stitch into the base. From there I'll work back up the cuff section with back loop single crochet, chain 1, work back down, slip stitch twice into the base, and as exactly the same as the bottom band, do that all the way around the cuff, and then seam it up again the same way as the bottom band. There'll be a timestamp in the description to tell you where to go if you need to refresh on that procedure. This is what my finished cuff looks like. So from the right side, the pattern just follows right across, almost invisible. I've already made a second sleeve over on the other side, so I'm ready to go on to the necktie. On to the necktie, I'm back to my 4.5mm hook. I'm going to start off with a very long chain of 80 chains. So starting with a slip knot as always, and away I go. I have my long chain, and I'm going to work a row of single crochet all the way around the neck opening. I'm just going to go straight into this bottom corner and join the chain straight onto there, and then just single crochet all the way around, working the row ends as I go up the sloping sides. Gone all the way around and I'm here, and now I need to make a chain of 80, the same as this side. Here's my second chain. I need to chain another one to turn, flip it over, because I'm going to work into the back bumps. So second back bump from the hook, I'm going to go in and I'm going to pull up a loop, and then I'm going to go into the next one and pull up a loop, and then I'm going to pull through all 3 loops to decrease at the start of the row. Then I'm going to put 1 single crochet in each chain, in each back loop, all the way down the chain. I'll work up and around the neck opening with single crochet, out the other side on the chain into the back bumps, decreasing into the final 2 stitches. Just working the last 2 chains on the other side, and as I mentioned, I'm going to be working those together as a decrease. So into the first loop and the second loop and decrease. So I'm going to work that same row now another 3 times, so 4 in total, decreasing at the start and decreasing at the end. 4 rows now on the necktie, and I've got a nice little point on this one end. I've added some stitch markers, so working from the side that doesn't have the decreases, so the side where your tail is, I've counted 30 stitches and I've put a stitch marker into the 30th stitch. I then counted 6 more, stitch counter into the 6th, stitch marker into the 6th. I counted 38 more and the stitch marker into the 38th stitch. From there I've got just 6 stitches up to the neck. I'm going to work back in this direction, and I'm going to stop when I get to within 1 stitch of the marked stitch, the corresponding stitch on the opposite side. I'm going to chain 1 to turn as normal to start the row, decrease into the first 2, 1 stitch in each, until I get to within 1 stitch of the marked stitch. This is the marked stitch. I'm going to slip stitch into there. I'm going to turn around. I'm not going to chain 1. I'm going to slip stitch into the very first stitch. And then I'm going to work back to the end, decreasing into the last 2 with single crochet. Down at this end again, chain 1 to turn, decrease into the first 2, and work single crochet up to and including the slip stitch. That was the slip stitch. Skipping straight down onto this next actual stitch, just missing this sloping section. I'm going to slip stitch into the following 6 stitches. I'm going to take my stitch marker from the other side and pop it into that last slip stitch. And next I'm going to work single crochet up to within 1 stitch of this next stitch marker. Here at the marked stitch, slip stitch into there, turn around, no chain, slip stitch into the first stitch and mark that slip stitch. And then I work back, single crochet up to the next stitch marker. Here I'm just 1 stitch away from the marked stitch again. I'm going to slip stitch into that stitch before the marked stitch, turn around, no chain, slip stitch into the first one. I don't need that anymore. Single crochet up to the next marker. Slip stitch into the last stitch before the marker. Take that out. Slip stitch at the bottom of the slope. And then into the following 6 stitches. That brings me to here. I'm going to single crochet all the way around until I get to this side and this last stitch. Over at the other side of the neck opening, I'm going to slip stitch into the next 7 stitches. And then I'm going to single crochet from here to within 2 stitches of the next marker. One stitch prior, I slip stitch into this one, I turn around, I slip stitch into the next one. I'm going to mark that stitch, and I'm going to work back up to this section. Here at the stitch just before the marker, I'm going to slip stitch, turn around, slip stitch again. I'm going to put a marker in that slip stitch, and then I'm going to single crochet up towards the next marker. Again, one stitch before the marker, I'm going to slip stitch, and then jumping past that sloping section, I'm going to slip stitch into the base, and then I'm going to slip stitch into the next 6 stitches. So next I need to finish up this bottom section. So starting with single crochet, I'm just going to mark that first stitch, and then I'll work all the way to the end, decreasing into the last 2 stitches. Here I am, work the decrease, chain 1, turn around, decrease into the first 2 and work up to the next stitch marker. Last stitch just before the marker, slip stitch into there, turn around, slip stitch into the next stitch, and work all the way back, single crochet, here at the last 2, decrease into the last 2 stitches, chain 1 to secure, and cut my yarn. So I'm just forming weird shapes with this necktie, all to enhance the bow. So I've counted 36 stitches and put a marker into the 36th stitch. I've counted another 38 and marker into the 38th stitch. I'm going to reattach my yarn into the very next stitch after the marker, pull through a slip knot, chain 1 to secure. Into the very next stitch I'm going to put a slip stitch, and then I'm going to mark that stitch. And then I'm going to work single crochet over to the other stitch marker. Last stitch before the marker, slip stitch into there, turn around, slip stitch into the next one, mark that slip stitch, and back I go, single crochet over to the next marker. Again, last stitch prior to the marker, I'm going to put a slip stitch in there, and then I'm all done on this side, so I'm going to chain 1 to secure and cut my yarn. Pull that through, get rid of these. So what I've been doing is I've just created a bump out on either side of the section where the bow is going to sit. So I need to add a second bump out over on the other side, just reattaching my yarn on the other side as I did on this side. Create the second bump, and then I'm done. If you do all of that, you should have one of these. If you like the video, please give a thumbs up. If you want to see more, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching today.